What's up, golf friends? This is Jim Colton, and this is the Driven Golf Podcast. I'm here with the super producer and guy with a super looper hat, Joseph K. What's going on, Joseph?
Hey, Jim, what's going on?
Yeah, it's good to see you. This is episode 43. You know, I saw you just the other day. We were together at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. You weren't wearing the hat. I was wearing my Driven.golf hat. You weren't wearing your looper hat. I thought for sure you'd be wearing it. But anyways, we got to hang out. You were basically spent more time on the course than maybe any of the players, it seemed like. You were out there for most of last week, did. So what was your observations being out there at TPC Craig Ranch?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to live 10 minutes away from the course. So rather than sit around on the couch all day and watch it, I thought I'd get out there and see the pros in action. So up close and personal. And had I known that you could shoot 66, 67, 65, 63 and still lose by 8, I would have never guessed that. So congrats to Scotty. He wanted to get in on the mix of a lot of big time winners we've seen lately. You know, JT has won, Bryson's won, Rory's won. So golf is in a great place right now. And yeah, it was great to see all the action out there. You know, weather was a little dodgy one day, a big time delay. But yeah, when you give Scotty some prime conditions on a well-manicured golf course, he's gonna pick it apart, and he hit some great shots out there. So it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you mentioned it because I'll add Jordan Spieth to the mix. Like as you get approaching a major, I think the PGA Championship's 2 weeks away now. Like you want to see guys coming in to form, and you mentioned these guys that have been winning lately, and even Bryson, you know, on the Live Tour. But you got Jordan Spieth also potentially going for the Grand Slam, kind of been an afterthought. You know, we were watching him because he was in the group behind Scotty, only because he was in the back half coming up behind Scotty. He was teeing off, obviously, in the last group that last day as they were trying to get caught up. Yeah, but then he goes out and shoots 9 under in the last round. A little bit of a statement. Hopefully, some good feelings that might carry over, you know, into Quail Hollow in a couple weeks. Who knows? Maybe we have 2 Grand Slam crownees in the same year, kind of out of nowhere. Honestly, I think no one's really has our boy Spieth on the radar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the golfers, I believe that you saw, he didn't make the cut, but in the first couple of days. Hayden Springer, that's our guest for this episode 43. Someone we've been really wanting to have on our podcast for a while, a local guy. He was a home game for him this week. And can you maybe paint a picture of this episode and just a little bit of background on Hayden and just the significance of him as a guest for us?
Yeah, so his story is one of the most unique and just pulls at the heartstrings kind of story in all of golf. You know, he had a huge tragic loss of a young daughter at a very young age. So, you know, he's been through, you know, the lowest of lows, and he's someone that I don't care who you are on the tour, you want to be paired with him and you want to be around him because, you know, he's someone that doesn't take a single minute of being on tour for granted. You know, he earned his right to be there through some of the worst circumstances. So it was really cool to listen to his story and get to see him at his craft. He's a big dude, man. He can get after the golf ball. I was surprised to see how big he was. So anytime there's a course with, you know, a lot of rough out there, I have no doubt that he'll be able to navigate it.
Yeah, like I said, he grew up in this area. And actually, I think he's maybe a year younger than Scotty. So really kind of growing up in the shadows. We hear all the time about Scotty, Will Zalatoris, all these tournaments that these guys won as juniors. And Hayden had a very good junior career, but overshadowed probably by these guys and all their accomplishments. And even his college career, even admitted like he wasn't heavily recruited. He went to Texas Tech and then ultimately had TCU. But the interesting thing, if you read in between the lines, and hopefully this comes out in the episode, he's been a guy who has just been steadily improving. And I think about sort of like the tortoise and the hare, like slow and steady, I think wins the race when it comes to golf. And he's somebody who's always had seems like he's always had this vision of where he wanted to be in the future. And he knew that that would take these series of steps, 200, 300, whatever, however many number of steps. And he was just willing to take those steps. Like his eye has always been on the future. And I just think that he's somebody who I would expect just to continue to like kind of slowly improve each year on the tour. And we've seen that even year 2 versus year 1. And I honestly think, like, we talked a little bit about it in the episode. I think a lot of this like character makeup and his personality, a lot of that kind of came through in the face of this tragedy too. And I think a lot of ways that the reason that his daughter and her story has really resonated with people is because they really fought to give her, as much life and as much opportunity as she could within this very short and tragically short life. But, just the amount of people that she was able to touch. And now they have this platform and really a purpose to the work that he's doing on the tour. And it's just bigger than that. And I think it's a story that we really wanted to tell correctly and give it the amount of respect and dignity that it deserved. And hopefully that comes out in this episode. But you said it, like, this is the guy we want to see continue to improve and do great things, win on the tour, grow the amount of awareness around Trisomy 18 and all the good things that can come out of playing really good golf. Because I think he's somebody who will shepherd that responsibility really, really well. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah, I think that's great. And one thing he touches on in the episode here, Jim, is he didn't play a whole lot of AJGA golf tournaments, and he may have needed some driven golf in his life. And I know the website has been kind of under maintenance and had seen some improvements. So you want to talk a little bit about that? What do we got cooking?
Yeah. This is a big launch. So we completely renovated and rebuilt the website driven.golf from scratch. And really, it was kind of tough to stay on top of it with the content and making sure that it was like readily accessible and available and easily, like the content was easy to find. So, I think that this new website's pretty slick in that, either if you're on your phone or you're on your desktop, really broken out into these content categories. We've got all of Andrew's, long form videos separated by category. I honestly think it's an easier way to browse his videos than to go on his YouTube channel. I don't know if I'll say that out loud, but like you can easily like sort through the categories of videos and it automatically filters it for you. And the same sort of user experience, I think, is for the podcast or also the blog post. So if you wanted to go, like we've had 6 or 7 college coaches we had on the podcast. If you just want to quickly filter college coaches, it would bring up those episodes. So the only other thing that I would say is this is just the beginning. So I think that that we've got big plans to continue to grow this over time. And just around the corner, we're going to continue to plug away at adding some more functionality. And the other thing I wanted to mention real quick is the Wagger Power Calculator, which used to just kind of exist as a Google spreadsheet, is now embedded into the website. So all you have to do is you can cut and paste like AJGA fields, or if you follow college golf and you want to cut and paste like a golf stat or a score or a leaderboard from Clipped, it automatically will look up all those Wagger names, the resulting ranks, and give you the power ranking, which hopefully can assist in sort of tournament scheduling and thinking about the different options if Wagger is something that's important to you. And I go ahead usually in the bigger ones, I kind of save them. So they're like on a sidebar. You can pull them up and see what the latest power rankings are. Pretty neat. I was pretty amazed at that
That's
we
fantastic.
could build that out. Yeah. So anyways, we're pushing on all fronts in an angle of attack. This segment, actually Hayden Springer talked about it too. He actually went back to his original swing coach in the middle of last year after he kind of struggled in the middle of the summer. And he's talked about like getting back to his roots and the things that made him good in the first place. He really wanted to kind of get back to the home base. And Andrew talks about that topic specifically coming out of the JT's win that you mentioned earlier, this topic of having this process of getting rooted in your fundamentals. Like Scotty is the perfect example of this, with his training grip and getting squared away and just having this routine where he's just never, I guess the reason he's consistently solid, he's never really that far off kilter, right? So he has this process where he's able to stay centered, and it's sort of the importance of it. And maybe a lot of junior and amateur golfers probably, they probably just take that for granted, but the best players in the world are very focused on that. And we've seen through Justin Thomas's improved play this year, I think it's because he's gotten more grounded in his roots. So jam-packed episode. I encourage folks to listen to the end. We have a really special DG Beat Lab song dedicated to Hayden Springer's daughter. So do me a favor, listen to that. If this episode touches your heartstrings in any way, like forward it to somebody you think needs to hear this story. I think that if there's anything that we can do to help raise awareness to Hayden, his family's journey, and also this platform that they have with this Extra to Love foundation, I think that we need to keep pushing on that front. So anything we can do on that front, we'll continue to do so. So Joseph, I appreciate the time. It was good seeing you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Jim.
All right, see ya. Hayden Springer, welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great having you. I know you have a bit of a home game this week, so this must be nice. I think you've been traveling the past few weeks.
Yeah, it is nice. It's nice to have to be at home, and it's a little different. It honestly, it feels a little weird, just because most of the time I'm in a hotel or Airbnb, and but it is nice to be home and kind of have that familiar feeling with that. But and then also, I grew up going to this tournament, so it's cool now to be able to play in it and have that opportunity.
Yeah, so we're chatting the last week of April. You're based in North Texas, not born, but raised in North Texas. This is the week of the Byron Nelson, so a little bit of travel up and down to Sam Rayburn. Hopefully not in peak traffic times for you. I know it can get kind of dicey.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so this is really year 2 for you as a PGA Tour professional. We'll talk about Q School later on, but last year was your first full year on tour. I think you were just outside the top 125, so conditional status for this year. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. I finished 127th on the FedEx Cup. So
Okay.
I missed out. It was just over 5 points.
Oh, wow.
Which is a very small margin from keeping my card from that 125 number, which would have kept my card. So technically a conditional member. So I'm kind of having to deal with that a little bit in terms of what tournaments am I going to get into, maybe have to get a couple exemptions. I've already Mondayed into a tournament this year as well. So, it's a little bit up in the air, but as we get into the summer, things start to open up a little bit more. So I'll have a little more access as well.
Well, it looks like, I know like last year, those rookies last year was kind of well documented, some of the difficulties in the Q School guys, especially getting starts early on. Like I imagine you were one of the guys that flew out to the Sony for the orientation, and a little bit of backlash to the tour. I think Ryan French, our mutual friend, has done a good job kind of highlighting some of the struggles. Maybe their models didn't quite work out in terms of how many starts, but it appears that you've been getting starts this year. And I did want to talk about this, like sort of like year 2 versus year 1 being like a fish out of water a little bit on the tour, and just sort of the lessons learned between year 2 and year 1, because honestly, you've made most of the cuts this year that you've played in. And I wonder how much of that is just experience, development, just knowing some of the places, knowing some of the routines, and what it's like to compete, what it takes to compete and make cuts on the tour.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important thing. It's maybe overlooked, is that little bit of that experience piece, especially on tour. At the end of the day, I'm playing against some guys that have been out there for 10 or 15 years. I mean, they've got hundreds of rounds at all of these different courses. And then too, it's, I think the tour is the style of golf, the setup, how firm the greens are, how fast the greens are, the rough. pin positions. Like there's a certain mindset, kind of a certain way that you have to go about your business to kind of perform well and perform consistently in that environment. And so I do think from my rookie year to this year, I'm definitely able to take some of that experience to kind of maybe feel a little more comfortable, feel like I have my process, my routine down a little bit better versus in year one going to some of these places and trying to play the Monday Pro-Am. And then I'm not in the Wednesday Pro-Am, so I got to figure out what I'm doing all day on Wednesday, and just like, I definitely struggled, maybe overworked a little bit, early in the week in kind of middle of the year, missed a bunch of cuts, kind of was like, okay, that didn't work. Like, it's pretty hard to just dig it out of the dirt when you're playing 6 or 7 in a row and you get to that back end and now you need energy just to play the event. So yeah, I do think it is a really, really important piece with the experience and kind of coming off of my rookie year now into this year, just being able to carry some of that stuff that I've learned into this year and feeling comfortable, feeling like I've got a good process, a good way to go about it, and kind of the style and the mindset as well. And my caddy plays a role in that is on the golf course, and just what are we trying to do? What's the right spot? When do we need to be aggressive? When do we not need to be aggressive?
Yeah.
All of that stuff. So it is a very important piece.
One thing I wanted to touch on, because I was looking at your stats year over year, and pretty steady, pretty consistent performance. There's one area of your game that I think has really has leveled up, and that's around approach game. And I wonder if some of that was intentional. Like we talk a lot about development, especially like off-season development. So I don't know if that was an area of focus, and reflection after the end of last year. And some of it, like you said, conversations with your caddy, being mindful of the target and picking good targets and course management. Do you think it's a combination of those two things?
Yeah, we were looking at that as like my approach was, strokes gained approach was pretty poor last year, which was really surprising because if you would have asked me prior to having that data, I would have told you that's one of my strengths is iron play, approach, mid irons, like all of that stuff I'm like, that's my strength, and so I was kind of shocked by that, but I also, I was going through a swing. So I switched instructors. I think it would have been around July of last year. And so I think really I probably look at it more from a technique standpoint and what we were doing with my golf swing, more than necessarily that there's anything that I did in the off season to try and fix something or maybe put a little more time into it. It's more like stuff I was doing in my swing wasn't good and I wasn't feeling confident. I wasn't comfortable with it. And then getting back to some stuff that I went back to my old coach, the coach that I grew up with, and kind of just getting back into some of that stuff that works well, kind of my DNA, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And so this year I've just been able to be more consistent. I've got a better feel. I know where the club is. And so I think it's more that for me is kind of just a little bit of technique, a little bit of confidence in terms of my feel and what I'm doing with the club. But yes, like in terms of the data and looking at it, like we were even still looking at this year, like my 125 to 150 distance is still not, in terms of the numbers, is not very good. So like we do pay attention to that, and we are kind of like trying to figure out, okay, why is that? Like, what's going on? Why am I not hitting pitching wedge as good as I need to? Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, it's a pretty high bar. I think of folks, you obviously played in college, but it seems like the common rhetoric around the biggest leap from high level amateur golf to PGA Tour is really around wedge play. It's like wedge game. And that's like folks really need, when they get out there, they realize that how much work they need to do kind of in those key scoring ranges, it seems like.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think too, it's even like around the greens, like just that 150 yards and in, like even around and on the greens. I mean, that's where it's really important. That's where you see, um, I think it's probably like the lowest hanging fruit in my opinion is like it's probably a little bit harder to gain 25 yards off the tee than it is to chip the ball 3 feet closer. So I think that's there. And there's a lot of guys that are really, really good around the greens, good with their wedges, that kind of can bail themselves out when they're not hitting it well. And I think people would be surprised too, like how often that comes into play. It's like we get to see the guys on TV that they're showing on the broadcast that are,
Right.
they're top 10. And typically if you're finishing top 10 on tour, you're playing pretty darn good, and you're hitting it well. But, if you're finishing 30th place, I mean, you're scrambling at times out there. And so you kind of get to see you get to see guys and their short game. And it can be pretty impressive, some of the spots that guys are getting up and down from, and I think I kind of look at it like you go watch guys hit 7-irons. It's pretty much the same across the board.
Right.
It's going to go 170 to 185, cuts and draws, about the same height. And there's really not much differentiation from even like a college level to the PGA Tour. It's very similar in terms of, that parameter of how good can you hit a 7-iron. A flush 7-iron is about the same across the board, but 75 yards, 90 yards, or just a pitch, a 30-foot pitch out of the rough. Those are things where it's like, okay, if I can gain a little bit here or a little bit there, get it up and down, that can make a huge difference.
I often observe that in junior and amateur tournaments. So you walk at the range and every kid looks like he's a striped show. You think like, oh, that guy must be a world beater. And then 3 days later, he's 15 strokes behind the leaders. It's just those little things that really add up over the course of 3 or 4 rounds.
Yep.
Well, you mentioned top tens. One of the more, I think one of your better finishes on the tour was this year at Torrey Pines, right? And as I recall, that tournament was pretty miserable conditions. Like, is that something that you really look forward to? Is just like playing well in those crummy conditions, like viewing that as an opportunity to really stand out, or is that something that you've been good at your in this journey?
I mean, I really like Torrey Pines. I think that's like, it's a special place for me. I played the U.S. Open there.
Yeah.
Our first daughter, we were able to take her with us, through all the stuff that we had with her. And, so I think it's just for me and my family, like Torrey Pines is always going to be a special place.
That's nice.
I played my first U.S. Open. I made my first cut on tour at Torrey, and so I went back this year. It's like, I like this place a lot. I think it's a great golf. I think the South course is one of the best courses that we play all year. I mean, it fits me pretty well too. It's a big golf course, and I think it's tight enough off the tee. The rough is thick. You're playing out of the rough quite a bit. I think statistically I'm pretty good out of the rough. I'm able to create a lot of speed. I'm taller. I've got leverage. I can get steep on it. So I feel like just those things like kind of probably work in my favor a little bit. But I think too, it's a good place. I like it. Conditions were tough this year. It was windy, and so I was able to grind it out and kind of just hang in there. And, I almost, like I had mentioned earlier too, it's a place where you have to think properly. You can't, if you put it in the right spots, if you miss it in the right spots, you're fine. You don't have to hit it to 5 feet on every hole and make a bunch of birdies. You just can't put yourself short-sighted in the wrong spot, because you can make a bogey or a double really quickly. So I think we did a really, really good job of that. So that was part of it too. But I mean, if you gave me the choice of playing in a, 30-mile-an-hour winds or a calm day, I'm taking the calm day every time. But I mean, I think I like to think I'm decently mentally strong and can kind of grind, and so I was able to do that week.
Well, speaking of calm day, I'm assuming it was a calm day last year, first round at TPC Deere Run, or the conditions were just ripe. So you were one of a 14 or 15 maybe pros all time that have broken the 60 mark. You
Yeah,
shot a 59.
15 now. Jake Knapp shot 59 at Cognizant just
Yeah.
not too long ago. So I was the 14th, he was the 15th.
And I was looking at your scorecard a little bit earlier. You shot a 27 on the front nine, so you're 8 under at the turn. And then I think you parred the next 5 holes. Is that right?
Yep.
So I wonder if any of these 59s in history, you might be the only one with the 59 with 5 straight pars in the round. You know,
I think that's probably true, and I know that I'm the only one that finished eagle birdie to shoot 59. I do know that.
So tell me about that. Like, you know, my friends will text each other when somebody, you know, it's just 59 watch. That's pretty common, right? When someone's going super low, super early, you get on the radar, right? You don't want to jinx it, but you just want to throw it out there. People, let your friends be aware and track the leaderboards of what's going on. So you're 8 under at the turn. Obviously, I think there's been other 59s at Deere Run. I mean, it's not the most challenging course that you play on tour. But what is that mindset like? Is it on your radar? Is it something you're thinking about? Is it something that you're not trying not to think about? But it's obviously 27 doesn't happen very often for 9 holes.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, like, I kind of just went on a tear on the front. Like, I was making everything, and then I hit a couple close. Like number 8, I hit it into like 4 feet, and then 9's probably one of the harder holes out there, one of the longer, harder holes, and I think I hit 6 iron into that green, hit to like 8 feet. Like, I mean, and it was spot on. Like just about 8 feet left of it, perfectly, positioned, and I make that. So I think I was 8 under, and I was thinking about it then for sure. Like, I was turning and basically telling myself, like, okay, you're never, like, 27, you're never going to get a better opportunity to shoot 59. Like, you're never, ever going to get a better chance. 10's a par 5, but it's really it's a tough par 5. And like, it's got a tiny green, water on the right. You're really not going for it. Like, it's just not worth going for it. So I made par there, make par on 11, make par on 12, make par on 13, and 14 is a drivable hole, made par there. So it's kind of like, in my head now, I'm like, all right, well, I think I just basically kind of blew it. Like, I haven't done, like, now I got to birdie the last 4 holes to do it. And so I kind of stopped thinking about it. Then on 15, I made about a 25 footer for birdie, and it popped in my head again, like, okay, if I birdie the last 3 holes, I got a par 5 too, then I can do this. Missed the green with a 9 iron on 16, short par 3, but I was feeling it a little bit. Like, I was playing good, but still, like, I'm thinking about 59 and whatever, and I blocked my 9 iron a little bit, and then chipped that like 10 feet past, and I was like, okay, like, but I made that putt. Well, okay, we're still alive, but I really wasn't thinking about it anymore at that point. It's like, I need to make eagle birdie to do it. Hit my tee shot right rough. I can still go for it. I hit this terrible, like, low hook out of the rough into the left rough, like 50 yards short of the green. And next thing I know, I hole this shot. And I look at my caddy and we high five, and in my head, I'm like, all right, I can do it. Like, now I can do it. It was like the first thought I had is, all right, like, it's on now. Like, I've just put myself in the position, and so walking to 18, people started showing up, kind of lining 18 up the tee box. And they're like, all right, birdie for 59. I just hear 59, 59. Like, people are just talking. And I hit a great tee shot right down the middle. Had a 9 iron in my hand, and I hit that in there, just on the right side of the hole, correct shot, and had, I think it was like 12 or 13 feet for birdie, and I was able to make it. But yeah, it was as a crazy day. It's like a day you dream of. I feel like it's not quite up there with like winning like practicing as a kid and like, okay, this putt's to win the Masters, or this putt. But I mean, I can remember in my head, okay, this putt's for 59, or like having those thoughts. And then I was able to give myself that chance to have that same putt to actually do it. So it was really cool.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I'm from Chicago, so I used to go out to play Deere Run every now and then when it first opened. And one of the very, very few things we have in common, golf related, is I've also eagled the 17th hole, but that was probably to shoot like a 74. I wasn't on my way to shoot 59.
Yep.
Yeah. So we talked a bit about, the current your life on tour. I did want to go all the way back to your beginnings. You mentioned just in junior golf and some of the aspirations and dreams of being someday a PGA Tour professional. One of the things that I think is interesting, I think you would have graduated high school 10 years ago now, right?
Yep.
2015.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up in North Texas, I think Scotty Scheffler would have been 1 year ahead of you, and maybe Zalatoris. I think maybe they're in the same grade. And anything you know about those two guys that they won like hundreds of junior tournaments growing up in Texas. So were you battling it out with those guys, like playing in a lot of the same events? I wonder.
Yeah, I can remember playing U.S. Kids stuff with Will. And he was dominating those. Like, he was the only kid shooting 32, 30. He was the only kid under par. So I don't think I was really pushing him much there. But, I think I played a few times with Scotty in high school. I know I was paired with him in the state championship 1 year. It was at Onion Creek. He won that year. I think he won with like a broken ankle, or he had rolled his ankle playing basketball or something like that, and he was playing in tennis shoes and still won. So yeah, both of those guys have been good for a really long time. And of course, Scotty was kind of, I think a lot of people knew he was going to be really, really good, and obviously he's the best player in the world now. But yeah, I do remember. I think those are my two thoughts: is the U.S. Kid stuff. I can remember Will dominating those, and of course Scotty winning the state championship in tennis shoes.
Yeah, that's funny. And you mentioned you're playing in the Byron Nelson, and this will give some listeners some indication of what golf is like in North Texas. You went to Byron Nelson High School, right? Mm-hmm. So not many high schools I think are probably named after golfers. So you might be the only one. I have no idea, but yeah. So that had been pretty interesting how this, you've been on this journey and now you're playing in the tournament that's named after him as well. It's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool.
So this junior golf progression, like obviously, folks that play the game or competed in tournaments and, someday dreaming of playing the tour, but like, how would you describe sort of your junior golf career? Cause like, we talk about Zalatoris, Scheffler, they'd be first team AJGAs. They both won the U.S. Junior. Because you're a contemporary of them now, but given like sort of your junior career and the opportunities that it led to, I think Texas Tech and then TCU, there had to been probably a number of your peers that growing up through junior and college golf that maybe had even a better resume and we've never heard of them. Like, I just wonder, like, is there something about like some of your characteristics that you think have led to you kind of continue to improve, or others maybe like can't miss prospects didn't quite pan out, you think?
Yeah, I've thought about it before, and I feel like for me, looking back, I've always I've loved the game. Like, I've loved being at the golf course. In middle school, my mom would, in the summer, would drop me off and in the morning, and it'd be 8:30, getting dark, and I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to come home. So I've put in a lot of time. I think that's probably one thing, is like I was willing to be like to put the time in, even in, like as a middle schooler or high schooler, and then into college, like, people might be going out, getting ready to go out on Friday night, and I'm still hitting balls. And then okay, I'll meet you or whatever. Like, I was, like I definitely have put in a lot of time. I would say my parents didn't really know in terms of like the best pathway and like the right tournaments to play to get the ranking, to get the right, eyes on you for college and all of that stuff. Like, I don't think they really knew all of that information. So I played US Kids, I played NTPGA, I played a ton of TJGT stuff. I think I only played in maybe 3 or 4 AJGAs. I really didn't, they didn't know, and I didn't, so I didn't get to play in much of those. I played some Legends events. And I really wasn't heavily recruited. I had, Texas Tech and Houston were kind of my top 2 bigger Division I programs. And I had some other opportunities at some smaller D1, some D2 stuff. But I think for me, I saw myself playing on tour. I saw myself being the best player in the world. And so I still felt like, no, I want to be at one of these big D1 programs where I'm going to get the most opportunity. I'm going to be playing against the best players in the best tournaments. And so Texas Tech kind of was like, it was that opportunity for me. And so I chose to go there and to kind of, pursue, in my mind, pursue professional golf while at Texas Tech. Like I think, and that's kind of my point is like, for me, I would say I've always had my eye on pro golf. This is what I want to do. Like all of these things are just stepping stones to then getting on tour, to then becoming the best in the world, to winning majors and all of that stuff. And so I do think I've had some grit, some resilience, some just with my eye has always been on the future. And so I've been able to get through some of those ups and downs, some of those harder moments when I'm not playing well. And I think it's easy now, I think, to kind of bounce around and to, chase, not like to be impatient, almost like go see this coach and then like go see this coach or switch schools or do whatever. And I think that, I kind of had that persistence and that just determination of sticking to the same process. And then I was able to see that get better and better and better and better over the years. And then I really, the only other point I have is I really think for me that transferring from Texas Tech to TCU kind of opened that door and gave me a little bit of freedom to kind of take some ownership of my game and to kind of figure out, okay, this is what I need. And then I had a little bit of success, was able to kind of continue to build on that. My senior year, I was playing pretty good. Even then, heading into like pro golf and like, I played on the Latin Tour. I played many tours. I've played a ton of Mondays. And then I got Corn Ferry status. It was really bad conditional Corn Ferry status. I'm not getting into tournaments. And then I kind of had to make the decision. Am I going to go to Canada or am I going to keep playing Mondays? All right, let's go to Canada. End up winning the Order of Merit up in Canada. And then that basically now has put me, where I'm at and the opportunity with Q School and all of that stuff. So, I mean, I say all of that just to kind of, I think I've been able to progress and see the progression every year, but I've had that persistence. I've had that kind of, eye on the future at all levels of like, this is where I'm going. Like, if I don't play good, I'm going to the next week because I'm gonna be there. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to that point. So, I mean, that's really, I think maybe one of my better qualities is just that kind of always having that eye on that next thing and where I'm going, and not so much caught up in what's happening right now, especially if it's not what I want.
Right. Because there could be a lot of up and downs in the journey. A couple of things I wanted to, because we have a lot of listeners that are either junior golfers or their parents, and I used to coach baseball, and one of the things I used to always say is there's really 2 types of kids. There's kids you have to drag to practice, and there's kids you have to drag from practice. I think a lot of this is just innate. Like you can't really change a kid character along those 2 things. Like you can drive them to practice. If they're the ones that aren't staying and put in those hours, like you really can't skip these steps. Like it seems like you really knew that it was going to take a lot of these steps to get to where you wanted to get to. and you just had this willingness and determination to do it because you just realized that it is part of the process. And if you can enjoy the grind of it and enjoy the process, it makes it that much more um, uh, a chance of it being actually successful in the end.
Yeah, it definitely, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I did want to talk about some of your amateur success, and because I think early on in your college days, you Monday qualified for a PGA Tour event. Is that right?
I did. I Mondayed into the that would have been 2016 FedEx St. Jude in Memphis.
Oh, well, that's a playoff event now.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
That had to been great because like now you can see your this goal, this dream that you have. It's right there. It's attainable. You're playing with and competing against the best players in the world.
Yeah, it was good for me. Especially to have that opportunity to Monday, to know, okay, I'm able to Monday, like I can do it. But then just to be out there with everybody and kind of, get to see guys hitting balls on the range, and kind of almost, I look back and reflect, and I can kind of see like, okay, I was able to learn things just from spending a week out there, that I wouldn't have learned if I never got that opportunity. I played with Mark Hinsby and Richard Sterney. Those two, like they're
Grinders,
two older guys, but they're veterans. They know what they're doing. And I remember, I think it was Hensby was probably hitting it like 270 in the air. I'm swinging out of my shoes, hitting it, 300 in the air, but it's firm and fast out there. And we're sitting side by side in the fairway every time. And I'm like, man, but he's hitting it, he's these smooth, low bullet, not much to it. And it just kind of, and I'm not saying that that's really like, that's not what you have to do, but it's kind of the veteran sort of play is, just in control. You're always in control of your golf ball. It's never out of control. It's never too far off. Correct spots in the fairways, correct spots in the green, so it was good for me to have that experience. Good for me to kind of be able to, one, be like, okay, I can do it. I can play out here. I can Monday in, but then just to be able to kind of go, yeah, but I also need to get better. Like there's things that I can see that these guys are doing that I'm not doing. I can do them. I'm just not doing them right now.
Yeah. And you mentioned sort of the progression that you had in college. I think two highlights I wanted to touch on. You won the Transmiss. Would that have been the summer before your senior year?
Yes, I believe that was 2000. That would have been, maybe? 2018. Yep.
So I think that was a pretty memorable finish to that tournament. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, that was a good one too. I made a hole in one on, I guess it would have been 16.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it would have been 16. I think I went up by one. Or actually, I think that put me tied. And then the guy that I was tied with made bogey on 17 right in front of me. And so that put me one up, essentially. And so I just had to make two pars coming down the stretch. I had a wedge in on 17 and made par. And then I vividly remember on 18, my dad was caddying for me. And I don't remember the yardage, but I know for sure we were in between 9-iron and pitching wedge. And he was like, dude, you're jacked up right now. Hit pitching wedge. And I hit pitching wedge, and it was the right call because I flew it all the way to the hole.
Yeah.
I had 25 feet left of it, and I two-putted it to win. And, that was really big for me. Like that was, a top amateur event with a great field at a great golf course that and you look at the names of the past champions there.
Right.
And there's some legends in the game on that trophy. And so it was really, really good for me. It was cool for me to win that tournament. And kind of gave me some validation in terms of, okay, yes, like I can't compete at a really high level.
Yeah, and I think that success carried over into your senior year. It looked like you had a really good senior year, and it was capped off by winning the Big 12. I think right ahead, a guy, maybe Victor Hovland, right behind him, right behind you.
Yep. Yeah, we had kind of pulled away. It was kind of just me and him battling it out
Wow.
in the final round of that Big 12 championship, and I was able to come out on top that day. That was really, again, like, that was cool for me. It was really good for me, kind of, to get that validation, to have that another opportunity to win a golf tournament, to do it. And that's something I think that I had always dreamed of, is to have a college win. Like, I wanted to win in college. I went to Texas Tech going, I want to win. And, I was able to accomplish that. I only got one win, but I got a win. To be able to have a win in college and to get that was really cool.
Yeah. And I think it's probably just further validation of the things that you're working on. It's all heading towards this goal that you had set out for yourself. It's just that confidence had to just build on itself over time with these successes.
Definitely. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So you talked pretty quickly about just sort of the grind of the tour and the challenges, I think, of just like getting status, not having status, not knowing where you're going to play next week, bouncing from different tours and trying to make these decisions on where to travel. I think that probably the interesting twist for our listeners, I think, is early on in your career, newly married, becoming new parents. And I don't know, like, frankly, had you ever heard of Trisomy 18, before your daughter was born, or before all of this happened?
Never. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah. So, like, you had also, like, your daughter was born, what, in 2020? Is that right?
Yep. October of 2020.
So you're a grinding, aspiring professional golfer, not knowing exactly where you're going to play next, traveling all over the place. You have a newborn daughter with a very unique set of challenges. Can you paint a picture of what those early days as a professional were like?
I finished up, I had an extra semester of school that I finished in the fall of 2019. So I had technically turned pro kind of in that fall. I played one event and then finished up school. And so come out 2020, January, and now I'm a pro. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm going to support my family. I'm going to go chase the dream and play Mondays and mini tours and try and get status somewhere. And then I think we would have gotten pregnant in January of 2020. So it was not necessarily something that we were, I would say that was part of our timeline, part of something that we had talked about and said, okay, this is exactly when we want this to happen. But I do believe that everything happens for a reason, that there's a plan, and so it happened, and my wife got pregnant, and we started going through that journey and realizing that it's going to, that one, something's not right, and we have to do further testing and try to figure out what that is, and then to ultimately get the diagnosis of trisomy 18, and then everything that comes with that, and the weight of that, and how we're going to move forward to deal with that stuff was tough. To then, on top of that, try and figure out what I'm going to do with my career and where am I going to play, and trying to go play an APT event, in Oklahoma or Louisiana, and then go play this Monday and all of that stuff. And then, of course, to throw an extra loop into it, was like, I think it was March 2020 that all of the COVID stuff started to happen, and
wow,
the world basically shut down. And so, it was tough. It was interesting, and I look back on it, and it seems almost like a long time ago now, just kind of like with everything that that's happened over the last 5 years. But yes, I mean, my parents and my wife's parents, my wife, they're all amazing people and have supported us so well, just through that journey. And my mom specifically would come over and spend the night, and I'd leave to go play a tournament, and she'd be here supporting my wife. She had all the knowledge and the medical training to take care of Sage and, and do all of that stuff. And so she was willing to drop whatever she was doing and come over and do that and to take care of Sage and to let me go and do what I need to do. And so I'm extremely grateful for that, because I know that I would not be here. I would not be on tour without that support.
Yeah. I mean, it is really incredible. I mean, it does take a village, but I'm thinking about how oftentimes you're competing against 23-year-old, 24-year-old aspiring pros that have really no, like they're almost like professional golfer LLC, right? Like they're optimized around every single facet of their life around being able to play golf at their maximum and reach their maximum potential. You're trying to do that and compete with them as well, but then you have all of these other, responsibilities with family, being early in your career and trying to support a family, and obviously everything with Sage just being a new parent, it would be tough enough for anyone. I want to just take this a moment for you to just talk about really just like Sage's life, because it seemed like obviously, much too short, but I think from what I could tell, just like jam-packed with just inspiring amount of joy and strength. And I think that, I just want to talk a little bit about her and just what her life has meant to you and how it has shaped and molded you and your family.
Yeah. I mean, she was, an amazing, an inspiring person, not only like I think to us, and like she changed our lives, her immediate family, but also she touched people that I think we don't even know maybe the extent of the people that were touched by her. I know that there were tons and tons and tons of people that were praying for her on a weekly basis, like that, all over the place. And so yeah, I mean, we were told whenever we got the diagnosis that making it to birth was nearly an impossibility, wasn't going to happen. And then even making it, if we did make it to that point, really 72 hours would be the maximum that we would have with her. And so we were preparing for that. Like that was what we kind of had to believe was going to happen in a way. That's what the doctors were telling us. And so we went to the hospital with nothing, no clothes, no car seat, no expectation that we were going to bring her home. And then ultimately she was born and kind of, for no reason other than I think that God intervened and was like, no, she's going to live and she's going to live for a long time. That they ultimately, like, she just kept living. Like there's really no reason. And without any medical intervention, we had signed a DNR, that we're not going to have any interventions. We brought her home, after 3 days in the hospital. She had an NG tube. That was it. And she was home on hospice. And we were just kind of like, we don't know what's going to happen, but we've been painted this picture of like the absolute worst is going to happen. And so we were staying up around the clock. We were, I can remember sitting we had moved out of our apartment, moved into my parents' house. And I can remember, we were taking shifts. Emma would go to sleep. I would stay up, and then we'd switch. And then like my parents would it got to the point after a couple weeks that we were so tired, that then my parents, like my dad would stay up with me and my mom would stay up with Emma, just to make sure that one of us, like that we're staying awake. Mm-hmm. And so like, I can remember my dad, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm falling asleep and he just looks at me. He's like, I got her. You can go to sleep and so I went to sleep for a few minutes, and ultimately the reason why we did that is because we did not want to miss that moment if she was going to pass, we did not want to miss that moment. And so we were basically waiting for that. And so that was, ultimately that was a few weeks. And at that point, we're looking at this baby that's a few weeks old and going, you're still living. Like, we're going to give you we're going to do everything that we can to give you that opportunity to continue to live. And so my wife is a nurse, and which is, like, I think one of the biggest blessings for our situation is just then she went to work. Like, she was hard nosed and went out to find these people, to find the doctors. She joined groups on Facebook to kind of figure out, what do we need to do? Like, how do we get to the right doctor to get the right treatment and the right intervention? And she needed heart surgery. That was the biggest thing that was kind of facing her, is she needed a full heart repair. And so we were able to get that done. We spent just over 2 months in the hospital in Austin. And with that, I found through the guy that was my trainer. He lived in Austin. I would go to the golf course that he was a member at, that the head pro happened to be a member at the golf course that I grew up at. So he remembered me. So he gave me full practice privileges. So I was out there pretty much daily practicing. And then there was a range right beside the hospital that I would go to and hit balls. So I was still practicing pretty much every day during that time. And then there was even, I think that towards the end, after we had gotten through the surgery and we were getting closer to going home, I left for a couple days to go play and then came back. And so then we brought her home, and then it was just kind of like, okay, she needs 24/7 care. So we're going to figure that out. We're going to make that happen. And my mom and my dad and them as parents, like I had said before, we're all in on that. And so I was able to go practice. I was able to travel, and do all that. But I mean, in terms of all of it, she, we got to take her to the U.S. Open. We knew that we wanted to really give her the opportunity to live, to thrive, whatever that looked like. We didn't really know what that was going to look like, and we didn't know for how long, but we knew that that's what we wanted to do. And so we were just doing whatever we could. We were going to kind of try to make it as normal as possible. And so really we had, like, I think that first 6 months was tough. And then we started to move in where, okay, she's fairly stable, fairly healthy. And we were kind of cruising, and we had a good routine and all of that stuff. And then really the last, like, year of her life, really 2023 was a tough year. She just had started to have a few things that we couldn't quite figure out. And then just kind of, we were working through things, trying to find a few different doctors and all of that stuff. And then, and all that. But she really, I think I look back and, I miss her like crazy. Like, I think that, it was a really hard time in our lives, and now our life, is normal. Like, it looks very normal. We have 2 healthy children, and, we can travel and go and do really, whatever it is that we weren't able to do before. But I think that it made us resilient. It gave us, it deepened our faith. We had to lean into our faith, lean into each other. We lean into our marriage and that promise that we made to each other. In terms of, and then too, it's like, my wife is, through all of that, was still willing to go, all right, go play in Latin America, go spend 3 or 4 weeks at a time in South America, and bad communicate, like the phone, not great communication. She's, by herself. She had help, but she's by herself taking care of a medically complex child and all of that. So, I think it was it's something that it's part of our story. It's our journey. And we've, um, through it all, I think maybe similar in terms of the mindset that I've had with golf, is like, we're just going to keep pushing. Like, we're going to get through it. We're going to keep moving forward. Um, and we were able to, and we did that. We gave Sage all of those opportunities, and we were able to provide her with, she almost over 3 years of life that we were told we would never get. And I would love to have, many more years, but at the end of the day too, that I know that we will all be reunited in heaven, and I'll have that opportunity to see her again, and we will both be made new. Like, there's there's not going to be there won't be any Trisomy 18 in heaven. And so, that there's some joy in that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that I can't help but hear these themes that are coming out. And, I don't know exactly how to put this. I apologize if I don't get it quite right, but I think of I had someone who worked for me. She shared with me that her brother had passed. It was actually on Easter, like 18, 19 years ago, and through like her sharing this with me, it made me realize that, like, I obviously didn't know her back then, but like a lot of her best qualities and best traits were, I think, in some direct result of that tragic event, right? So like a lot of times, like, these unfortunate things, like, you don't really you wouldn't wish them on anybody, but then, like, God's plan, I think, is bigger than we can know or understand. And sometimes when you zoom out, you can get a glimpse of it, and it starts to make sense. And I just think of, like, it sounds like your character, just even with the golf stuff, and your wife and her upbringing and her gifts, that it seemed like God wanted Sage, you know, like, it was almost like you were a gift to her, and she was also a gift to you,
Yeah.
in this way, where it starts to make more sense. And I think about, like, now this platform that you have as a professional golfer, and you honoring her legacy and her life through that. But before we go there, I want to talk about Q School, because your daughter, she passed away towards the end of 2023. You're playing in Q School a little over a month later. And obviously you're playing for your livelihood, you're playing to support your family, and you're dealing with this tragedy. It got a lot of, attention, rightfully so, but people are rooting for you, pulling for you. But how was that, just like dealing with that week, and the emotions, and being able to focus to be able to play at a high level of golf, and earn a tour card?
Yeah, I think it's one of the few tournaments that I've played where I feel like I almost didn't have any expectation. Like, normally I'd say that I go in, and I have some sort of feeling, some sort of thought. Um, I guess I would try to minimize that as much as possible. But, that week, it was just about a month after she had passed. And, we're doing all of the things that we needed to do with that. And then it shortly after, it's like, okay, well, I got to play Q School. I guess I need to practice. And so I'd practiced a little bit, but I wouldn't say I really put in a ton of time. And we show up there, and I had been asked to like, for the week, be part of some of the content that was going to be put out by the tour. And I had said no. Like, I really was not mentally ready to engage with anything surrounding her passing, and I didn't want that to take away from the opportunity that I had as well in front of me, and kind of the mental energy and emotional energy that Q School just naturally comes with, but also, maybe that was going to come out, and having a camera in my face, and all of that stuff. And so I think that's one of the best decisions that I probably have made is kind of being able to say no in that moment, and just being able to go in and my really up to that point, my family hadn't traveled with me to any tournaments. We really didn't have the opportunity to do that. And so we had made it, a thing. Okay, we're gonna be together in this time, and so we all traveled to Jacksonville together. And I think that was really important. That was nice to have my wife there, and then our second daughter as well. She was about a year old at that time, and so yeah, I mean, it was an emotional week, but also I think I almost had like a numbness to me, where I really wasn't thinking a lot. Like there was almost no thoughts going on, and then I turn out and I'm now in contention to get my card, and I really have like no rhyme or reason, there wasn't like some feeling of like I'm playing great or anything like that. I just I just showed up, and I think I had a good. I didn't have, like I said, I don't think I had much going on in my head. I think I had still just a little bit of that numbness, and just kind of going out and playing, and the conditions were brutal that whole week. So it was a test, it was a grind, and I was able to handle it and able to put myself in position to get a card, and so I really, it's one of those things, like I look back and I have really almost no good answer. Like I don't know, other than it's part of God's plan, and whatever, just the timing of it, and all of that stuff. Like I don't know. Like I don't really have a good answer.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
But now, like year and a half later or so, you're playing on the PGA Tour, and just like the story, your daughter's legacy, and just the amount, like you talked about your wife and the research she's done and the community that she's engaged with. I imagine that folks are reaching out to you saying how your daughter's journey and your story have inspired them. Maybe they're dealing with similar challenges, or they're about to deal with similar challenges. Like, is this part of the reason around the foundation that you and your family have started in order to honor your daughter's legacy? You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, we actually had started the foundation, and it started out as Springer Family Foundation. We had started that, I think it was in 2021, and really the thought for us was we wanted to give back, because like we had a path with Sage that, through the support, not only like with Ryan, like Ryan French, and the stuff that he did for us, and raising money, and putting our story out there, that was a huge part of it, but also the people around us, our parents, our friends, that were able to support us, and so those two pieces, we kind of really, we had what we needed in those moments to be able to travel to get Sage the care that she needed, and then to be able to come back home, and then for me to be able to go out and to work and pursue my career and all of that stuff. And so we were able to kind of reflect and see, okay, like we were very, very blessed in that time to have those things available to us. And so we wanted to be able to give that to other people, and to provide some of that to other people. And so that was really the thought behind it. The catalyst for it is just kind of our blessing, being able to have that support, and then wanting to provide it to other people. And it's kind of evolved now. We've rebranded to Extra to Love, and kind of made it so it's more clear what our focus is, and our focus is on the people and their families with trisomy 18, trisomy 13, supporting them financially, educationally, and giving them the opportunities that we had, trying to give them the opportunities that we had, and supporting them if they need to travel for care, and connecting them with kind of with other people in the community to be able to share information and get the right stuff going. And and so that's really now in the last couple of years, we've been able to help quite a few families, quite a few children, provide them with different resources, and that's what we're going to continue to do. We'll continue to kind of support that mission, support the support children and families with trisomy, dealing with trisomy 13, trisomy 18, and I think it's kind of like you had mentioned before. I didn't know that trisomy 18 existed. I had never heard of it. I didn't know that, that there was really, I think you're just kind of naive to it when you never have any experience with medical complexities or special needs. It really doesn't ever mean anything to you. And then for us to kind of it be thrown in front of us and like, okay, now it really means something to us. And it's something that we want to, it's not, I still feel like we're even trying to figure out exactly how in all the ways that we can help. I think we're still trying to figure that out. But we're just trying to help as much as we can. And I think it will only continue to grow. And that's our goal, is to grow and to be able to provide as much assistance as possible.
Well, I know you have an early tea time tomorrow. I want to say this in the nicest way possible. I hope that you and your family become the poster family for trisomy 18, because in a lot of ways that means that you've had a lot of success on tour, which has increased the opportunity and platform and the amount of times that this story is told. And more importantly, I think it's just honoring the legacy of this 3-year life that your daughter lived, and the life that you were able to give her, and the amount of, like you said, joy and strength that she has given you and continues to give you day to day in your life, your family's lives, and just even this career journey. I imagine it's just tremendously molded and shaped you as a person, as a Christian, as a golfer, in all of these different facets. And there's that will never stop, I imagine.
And that yes, I mean that's that's our goal, and I think that's we want to be obviously we want the Lord to be at the middle of it, and we want that to be ultimately that's He's most important, and our salvation is most important, and witnessing and sharing that message. But it's been very important that our faith has been so incredibly important through this entire journey, and just kind of trusting in the Lord, and knowing that we don't always understand, we don't always know why, and we don't always understand why bad things happen, and it's not fair, but we do know that His promises are true, and we do know that our eternity is secure in Him, and that's ultimately almost like that's what we're looking towards. Like those are things that we can wake up every day and know this is a for sure thing, and have faith in that, and it keeps you going.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to say it any better than that. So I will wrap this up. Hayden, you're absolutely one of the good guys on tour, somebody that everybody should be rooting for you to have continued success. I hope you go out and win the Byron Nelson this week. And when you do get that first victory, I hope to have you back to talk about it. So I really appreciate the time here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Hayden. What's going on, Andrew? This is the Angle Attack with Andrew Lewis. How's it going?
Hey, Jim. Everything's good, man. How are you?
Good. Hey, we're kicking off Volume 5 of the Angle of Attack series. Got a little like mini series that I wanted to talk to you about, and we're going to break this up into 3 segments, but really wanted to talk about this concept of process versus outcome. And what made me think about this more recently is, we've had some big wins in the PGA Tour just recently. Obviously, Rory finally getting the monkey off his back, and we talked a while ago about him with the off-season changes and just sort of his dedication to this process of making these swing changes. And then more recently, Justin Thomas got his first win since his major win of the PGA Championship. And one of the things that sort of, like JT's been playing great this year, and he's gone from probably a below average putter to this year is really putting really well. And I think at the RBC, he was like 5 strokes above the field in putting. So what kind of came out was something around like he got like a tip or his spending time with Xander and really focused on his putting. And these questions came out about like, well, what are you doing? And like, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And he wasn't doing any of that stuff and stuff he had been doing in the past that was sort of working for him. Now I know that like JT as a player, like he plays with quite a bit of flair. You know, he takes high risk. That's part of the reason why he's so compelling as a player. But there's a bit of the kind of mundane when it comes to the process that I think he's maybe learned to embrace, and he's having some newfound success. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts around just this recent development in JT's play, this commitment or recommitment to the process, and how that might relate to the junior players that you coach.
Yeah, I feel like I have this conversation a lot. And the word that JT used was he didn't really have a home base. And so, I feel like I'm consistently, like when someone comes to a session or I'm talking to a player that's thinking about coming to see me, I almost always start with, what's your process and your different skills? Like, what is your home base? What is it that you go back to make sure that every day things are staying relatively the same? Like, for example, down here in Texas, it's been incredibly windy. So, of course, every player I see has the ball more back than they realize. And so when I ask that question, like, well, how would you make sure that doesn't happen? Like, it's very simple. I need to check my ball position with an alignment rod every day. So I think what happens with really good players like Justin Thomas is that it's very easy to just kind of be like, well, I'm doing this skill well, and maybe I just don't need to check it very often. And it's kind of a slow bleed where over time, little things like ball position, where your hands are at address, how far away you stand, just kind of get off, because putting, especially if you're doing something like, I actually just watched a video, he does like a putting tutor type thing where he's hitting it through a gate. It's very easy at his level to hit the ball through the gate. You can hit the ball through the gate a lot of different ways, but is it really like how he wants to be putting? So I think that's great that he's getting back to that. That's really what I see how people have sustained success. When you watch Scheffler on the range, when he's using his training grip and he's always has his 2 alignment sticks on the ground. It's not a coincidence that he is one of the most consistent ball strikers on the planet. And it's not because he has this miraculous swing. I think it's because he checks the things that he can control every day. And even speaking to that, like he always says, like, I can't really control how I play. I can just control how I like show up to this event. So, I think we can all learn a lot from people like what JT's doing. Obviously, Xander is an incredible putter. I love his process. I love Bryson's process. They're so meticulous. You said mundane. But I think a lot of people, even guys like JT that are more, let's say, field players, are going to benefit a lot from having that home base.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think like JT has one of the best like short games. So you would think that would translate into putting, but maybe maybe like chipping, it is more of like a feel skill where he feels dialed in around the greens, but like that same feel doesn't really translate into putting if your setup's slightly off or you're not kind of getting rooted in this kind of setup process. So I think that's really interesting, especially like JT. Like, I mean, they said in the broadcast like how many course records he had on the PGA Tour. It was like
Yeah.
9 or to some ridiculous. Like, I know he has a 59. I think he has like 361s. He has this ability to go really, really low when all of these things are hitting at the same time. But like the putting in a lot of ways kind of holds you back from going on those like super heater runs if you're hitting it stiff and you're just maybe not making as many of those kind of 10, 15-foot birdie putts. And it seems like, yeah, it's the US Ryder Cup team, they need him this year. It's a good thing
Yeah.
that he seemed to have found his form again. So
Well, and so first about the short game. The short game is the most, you could say that putting is the most black and white area, and short game is the most gray because every shot is a little bit different. You're hitting off, a different lie most likely every time, and so the adaptation needed from one shot to the other is very, very high. Versus in putting, I mean, in theory, you're kind of just trying to hit the same putt over and over, aimed at a different target. So that's where those kind of things don't necessarily translate. And then I think the other thing is when, let's say he is putting bad. I think the other thing I see that can be very dangerous is instead of embracing, the mundane things and making sure those are correct. I mean, how often do we see someone changing putters or changing styles or changing coaches? And you could argue that's going to get you further and further away from really who you want to be, and you're going to show up with, I'm not going to name the company, with some certain type of putter. Maybe it's long, maybe you're putting left-handed, you're not using the line anymore, but it's very, very easy to get away from like what you were putting like when you putted well. So the cool thing with Xander's questions is it basically led him back to where he needed to be, and that's honestly great coaching. Like, let him come up with the answer, because if he's coming up with his own answer, his conviction of doing that's going to be much higher versus, let's say it was Xander saying, well, you should just go do this. So yeah, be careful, guys, when you're not doing something well. There's a lot of, we could go over a lot of cautionary tales of how dangerous that can be.
So you mentioned home base. I think, is it easier to, when you're having this conversation, to get your client or another golfer to think about what did it look like when you were sort of locked in? Because then there's sort of this validation that like, you can visualize this time where you were just on a putting heater or something like that, where you felt like, or your ball striking was the absolute best, and then you can maybe lead to what were you doing during that time period, like because you might get the answer like what's your home base and they don't know,
Yeah,
but like
of course.
where do you go from there, like because you would know your players' tournament history, like you would know some of their backstory, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, doing things like that and having notes, having videos, Matthew Fitzpatrick, taking notes of when things are good is always a good idea. A lot of times though, you can get so far removed from that to where it's almost like your thumbprint changed so much that like, yeah, I remember doing that, but I honestly, my brain doesn't even remember how to do that. And so that's where sometimes a reset is good. But I would just say if someone's doing this fairly often, I mean, on a daily habit, then that just is likely not going to happen. So if you don't have a home base, you need to find one. If you had one in the past and you feel like that helped, I would get back to it. Again, going back to being process oriented, you really should be believing in these things independent of if they're going well. I really don't think just because you're having a somewhat of a poor performance means you should be changing everything. That's not really how this is going to work. Everyone's going to have ups and downs and things, and especially in putting. I mean, you can be hitting great putts that just don't go in. It happens all the time. If you start trying to find answers in some other way, that's probably going to lead to less than desirable long term results.
Yeah, you think of those videos you see where the guy's doing the roll on the perfect putter. They're exactly the same, like three different balls, and they
Yeah,
go they go three different directions. It's grass, right? It's
yeah,
green.
wind.
It's
I mean, it's yeah, the golf ball. I mean, Bryson's doing something to his golf balls with Epsom salt. I mean, there's a lot to it. That's where you just have to have a belief of like this. I know this helps me. Like I ask people all the time, like, why do you use the line? And they'll say, I don't know. I say, you use it because it helps you aim, right? That's why you do it, because you know you can't aim well, so that's why you do it. And that's why I posted that video a few days ago of Bryson and Justin Rose lining up their ball on the tee box, but I've told many people that they're like, I would never do that. It's like, but the two of the best players at the Masters do that. So, I think you just have to know like what helps you. And that really is not going to change much once you kind of figure out I call them my blueprints, but as JT said, your home base.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And look, I think the overarching message here for junior and amateur golfers, if the best players in the world are doing this and you want to get to that level, at some point you're going to need to embrace this, right? And I think every day that you don't embrace it, you're probably getting further and further away from that goal. Like you might be able to make it without ever doing this, but if the greatest players in the world are micromanaging all of these different aspects of their game, including this home base and this process, shouldn't that be a clue that maybe it's a good idea to do that?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think a lot of people think that, well, at this level, it must be different. Like they must be doing something like drastically different, and that they're not. They're not doing anything different than you're doing. They're just doing it. They're obviously doing it better at a higher level. But the things that they do to check the things that make sure that they perform at the level, it's really not going to change much. I mean, this is not rocket science. I think sometimes we think we will, and I think also people respond sometimes with, well, when I get to that level, I'll start doing this stuff. And it's like, no, the stuff that's going to get you to that level is likely going to be this mundane, everyday stuff. So learn really good habits. I mean, when people talk about getting the most out of your practice, this is really what that looks like. I mean, this is a very introductory conversation, but this is kind of the start of making sure that your block practice is going pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if folks have more questions and they want to know what exactly this looks and feels like, they can reach out to you at Andrew Lewis Golf on Instagram. It's probably the easiest way to reach you. You mentioned some videos on your YouTube channel, which is A Lewis Golf. Point people towards that, and hopefully we can continue this conversation. I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, definitely check out the YouTube. I've got quite a few videos on these type of things, and definitely reach out if you have any questions.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
All right, Jim. Talk to you later.
The Driven Golf Podcast is produced by Joseph K. If you like this episode, like it, subscribe, pass it on to a friend who might be interested. It really helps us out a lot. We'll be back in a couple weeks with the next episode. Until then, remember, in this great game, the journey is the gift. Enjoy the journey.
Cradled in the cradle where the odds look grim, where the gate swung heavy and the light looked thin, where the world drew curtains but the spirit broke in, where the silence split open and the song begins, and the clocks kept ticking but the miracle played. Each blink was a banner, every breath was a blade, each tear was a treasure, each sigh was a stave. Sage days were the clay that his own hands made. He's the map through the shadow, a chart for the climb, while the pulse kept hammering the anvil of time through the fields of the valley where the soft lamps shine. Let the song be the psalm that the angels chime. When the nights grew heavy, your light was enough. When the road felt broken, you carried us up. Every beat of a heart was a sign from above. You gave us extra. You gave us extra to love. She's the seed in the soil where the rivers renew. She's the bloom in the valley where the cold winds blew. She's the hymn in the hush when the twilight grew. She's the ink in the covenant the promises drew. She's the flame in the forge when the night turns cold. She's the weight in the will that won't crack or fold. She's the smile in the silence when the silence grows old. She's the pearl that shines bright, just the light in the load. She's the whisper, keep pushing when life gets tough. Keep fighting, keep moving when your drive finds rough. When your armor feels heavy and the battle stack up. She's the hand on your shoulder saying don't give up. When the nights grew heavy, your light was enough. When the road felt broken, you carried us up. Every beat of a heart was a when the nights grew heavy, your light was enough. When the road felt